Welcome back to AgriVista, where we explore topics in agriculture. I'm Josh Mategas. On this episode, we'll go back to where the Albert City Threshermen all started, with the importance of these shows. Not only in the agriculture industry, but across the state, antique-centric shows attract people from all over the world. Apart from the knowledge and camaraderie gained from a social aspect, the tourism offered fuels the economy, but more importantly, showcases what life in our state used to look like. Before we get any further, let's take a sneak peek at what's coming up.
If somebody's curious, I'm happy to answer any questions and hear that curiosity.
Maybe you're going with your parents or your grandparents, and it really kind of fosters that connection between families too.
We want to have young people involved, and they're going to be the ones that are educating the next generation.
All of this and more coming up on AgriVista.
You just got to come out here to see it.
From lending tractors, horses, equipment, or even a helping hand, numerous volunteers pitch in to offer any help they can to make the Albert City Threshermen as special as it is. Through all of this, the education-focused nature of the show encourages engagement with volunteers for hands-on experiences to create memorable moments for young generations. While some come to relive the glory days, sharing knowledge and reminiscing in stories with spectators gives fulfillment for the time offered by volunteers.
What originally started out as a show for the children of two families has blossomed into an annual marking on the calendar for families across the Midwest. Attracting the young and old from all over proves to be too big of a challenge for one man. The tremendous help from volunteers ensures the Albert City Threshermen makes a lasting impact, especially on the young generation.
We just came out to have fun and demonstrate how some of this equipment was ran, 100 years ago. Some of the kids have no idea how much work was involved in farming, creating the food.
Within an industry flourishing on change by integrating new technology, agriculture has built upon foundational manual labor mentalities. But with efficiency dramatically increasing over recent decades, these foundational mentalities become lost.
Now it's going to take teaching the next generation, a little bit of what took place on their grandparents' side or their great-parents' side. It's going to take some education.
While entertaining, an education-focused mentality drives the show. Such a mentality that has been adopted by all of the volunteers.
That's what I love about coming out here and doing this. If somebody's curious, I'm happy to answer any questions and hear that curiosity, because that's what we're here for as far as I'm concerned.
As part of educating the young generation to continue the tradition, part of the crucial knowledge comes from first-hand experiences shared by grandparents.
A lot of times you'll see Grandpa bring a grandson along and say, "That's what I grew up on."
They may tell the grandkids or the great-grandkids, if they're old enough, to some of the piece of history that they may have experienced, and that's a part of the education process. We want to have young people involved, and they're going to be the ones that are educating the next generation.
The tremendous growth and blooming popularity the show has experienced has led to incorporating numerous unique aspects over the years. With an emphasis on educating our next farmers, perhaps the equipment of today will find itself in this show decades down the road.
I'm now privileged to be joined by Amy Zeigler, State Tourism Manager for the Iowa Tourism Office. Now, Amy, I have to imagine when people think of Iowa, tourism might not necessarily be the first thing they think of.
Yeah, we get that a lot, Josh. But in fact, tourism in Iowa is a $9 billion industry. And in 2022, we actually welcomed 35 million visitors to and within our state. So it's really a big deal. And I think part of the reason for that growth and economic recovery is because the pandemic really changed people's perspectives on what tourism can be. People are taking shorter, more frequent trips closer to home and really trying to explore their own backyards.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see that too, and especially with shows such as the Albert City Threshermen, bringing that agriculture-focused side into it as well, with the rich history that we do have with agriculture. So what role do you think those shows play with tourism here in Iowa?
Yes, absolutely. I think events like that, Threshermen's, is an absolutely integral part of the wider agritourism scene in Iowa. As you know, and as everybody knows, Iowa has this rich heritage of agriculture to our state, and it really kind of leans into that travel trend as well. There's things both nationally and even globally that really align with agritourism being the focus, including sustainable tourism, things like foodie tourism, and even the popularity of outdoor recreation.
Yeah, now you mentioned agritourism, how it's kind of unique here to Iowa. So what does that all entail? Because it has to be with the Threshermans here, with the antique focus, but I
Yes.
have to imagine there's a lot more to that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. So it starts with that history and events like the Threshermans, but it really expands into, farm to table restaurants, pumpkin patches and apple orchards, even some of our Iowa wineries, breweries, and distilleries, utilizing things that were grown here to create other products and encourage people to come and visit.
Yeah. Now you mentioned people taking shorter trips now and stuff, staying around home and stuff. So why do you think it is that people either in the state or outside of the state choose to come to shows like the Threshermans when they could go anywhere in the world?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So I think as people get one, two, even three generations removed from their own agricultural history and their family history, there's a real sense of nostalgia that comes with coming back to Iowa or visiting Iowa and learning about, how does farming evolve? How has it evolved since the era of the Threshermen to even now with things like self-driving tractors and precision ag? And I think there's just a really rich sense of history and nostalgia that comes with it.
Yes, speaking of that, like history part of it, that's one thing I've noticed too, talking with some of the volunteers who are out there at the Threshermans. They love interacting with that younger generation to show them
Yes.
what life used to be like. So, how
Yes.
important is it then for to get these younger generations involved in these shows to maybe continue them into the future?
Yeah, I think it's critically important. I think things like the Threshermans are able to show, here's how it was, but also educate on, how things have evolved into sustainability practices, into saving the environment, and even just down to where does your food come from? I think a lot of kids these days don't even realize that.
Yeah, definitely. Very important there and everything. But I just want to take a step back here and learn a little bit more about you, about your job with the state tourism
Yeah.
office and everything. Kind of talk to me a little bit. What are some of the different big tourism events that we do have here in Iowa?
Well, we have RAGBRAI, which is starting this week and running through Storm Lake. RAGBRAI is certainly a big part, but a key part of the agritourism is actually the Iowa State Fair as well, coming up in August. That event, if you compare it to other state fairs, I don't know if you've been to any other state fairs, but the Iowa State Fair itself is really, really steeped in agriculture, much more than any others. They have the animals and the varied industries building and just all of this rich history that comes together to show people how much fun agritourism can be.
Yeah, and going to the state fair a couple of times, it's just a special place down
It
there. A
absolutely
couple
is.
places have ranked it as one of the top 50 places to go or something.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but with your job as well, I have to imagine you interact with a lot of people, and
Yes.
everyone always says there's Iowa nice interacting with
Yes.
all the people there. So how is it working with the different volunteers who put on these events?
Oh my gosh, yeah, you're absolutely right. We have that Iowa nice reputation to uphold, right? But I also think, when you're interacting with other events and attractions around the state, everyone takes so much pride in what they do, and they really, really want to educate and show people how things were, how they are now, and they really want that human touch, which is really, really fun to see.
Yeah. Now, we did talk a little bit about volunteers and interacting
Mhm.
with the younger generations. And in that last package, I touched on the volunteers and the importance of having them. So, why is it important for them to be engaged with the spectators and in the
Yes.
demonstrations and everything?
Yes, so that is really key to making that memorable experience. I kind of compare it to, if you go to an amusement park, would you rather watch people ride the rides or would you want to ride them yourself? So, really getting that hands on experience, talking and working with people who know what they're doing, that is what makes the memorable experience and the experience that you're going to talked about with your friends and family later on.
Yeah, most definitely. I remember when I was growing up and stuff too, my parents took me to similar shows like the
Yeah,
Threshermans. Those are still memories that I hold close to my heart too,
absolutely.
is working on a threshing machine or just seeing that and stuff with everything out there at the Threshermans and stuff.
Mhm.
But with the Threshermen as well, they are very education focused with interacting with those volunteers and everything. So how does that educational nature attract people then to these shows?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that, so being so removed from their own family's agricultural history. And I think a really key part of events like this is, maybe you're going with your parents or your grandparents, and it really kind of fosters that connection between families too, where you can talk to whoever you're there with and say, okay, how did this work on our family farm? And how did we do things? How did you do things? And it really just helps foster that connection and education and history and pride in our state.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, of bringing the whole family out to these shows. Is that something you've seen, that it's not just parents bringing their children out, it's grandparents going out with their grandkids to go talk to them at these shows?
Yes, multi-generational travel is a huge trend, and we're seeing that in every single facet, where it's extended families going on vacations, planning family reunions in tourism destinations, and really just finding that sense of connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that sense of connection out there at these shows and stuff, I have to imagine it builds a little bit of a community there with the volunteers. They're out there for 20 plus years volunteering their time and stuff. It has to become like this little family atmosphere out there that makes the show so special.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think to see that kind of connection, and it almost becomes like a little reunion themselves, right? Every single year, you're going back to those same destinations and attractions. I even compare it like RAGBRAI, which is happening imminently. It's really a sense of, people coming in from all over the country and all over the world, and convening in Iowa for 1 week every summer. And it's a tradition.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what this show is. That's what really a lot of shows are in the state here in Iowa. But we greatly appreciate your time. Before you go, though, we do have a viewer question that was sent in. So the viewer is wondering, what is your favorite show that you've been to here in Iowa?
That's always a really hard question. But I think my favorite agritourism experience in Iowa has to be Pizza on the Prairie at the Country Life Center in Orient. And it's where they grow all of the ingredients on the farm. They create these amazing wood-fired pizzas. You have a picnic on the prairie, and it's all next to the homestead of former U.S. Secretary of Agriculture and former Vice President Henry Wallace. So that's got to be my favorite.
Wow. Now, before you go, I do just have to ask again, what is the value of agritourism to the state of Iowa?
It's huge. I mean, it's one of our competitive advantages for sure. And it's really something that we can hang our hats on more than any other state or any other country. We should be the leaders in agritourism, and I think we can be.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joshua.
Make sure to make your way to the Albert City Threshermen and Collector Show, August 11th to the 13th, and see all of the feature aspects we've brought you, plus more. That wraps up our deep dive on this special Collector Show. I'm Josh Vitigas, and you've been watching the special Albert City Threshermen Series on AgriVista, where we explored the past to understand the present and excel into the future.